You're so solemn. Morning, Brian. How you doing?
Hi, Brian. We're keeping up.
So today, how you doing?
We're doing all right. Yeah, I'm looking forward
You're
to
doing all
getting
right.
this lockdown over and done with.
Yes, we've got a few more days to podcast our way out of.
Yeah.
So today I wanted to talk about, this is more for the yogis and yoga teacher training, most likely. Having a look at, we're going to do, a series of podcasts on the Bhagavad Gita. And starting with this particular one, just being a short overview of the book itself, the trajectory of the book, a little sample of the material that's in it, and what the use of it is, and maybe the tone, why it was written in a particular way. So where would you like to start with that? What's your overview?
A good place to start is to give like a brief overview of the historical setting in which the Bhagavad Gita was spoken. Especially like the first chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, they don't really start with the teachings yet. They just set the scene. And some of the things which they say in that first chapter, they talk about certain personalities. And if one does not really know the Mahabharata story, it's very hard to appreciate. Oftentimes, when people start reading the Bhagavad Gita, I just recommend them just starting from the second chapter, where the teachings actually start, because the first chapter, they won't really understand it. So the scene is that the Bhagavad Gita is being spoken before a massive war is about to be fought, known as the Battle of Kurukshetra, which took place 5,000 years ago, in a place known as Kurukshetra, which is in India. It still exists today, and it was a tremendous battle. Actually, this battle has shaped this world for what it is today. That was actually the one main event which made the most influence, which I can discuss a little bit later as to why I'm saying that.
Just a quick footnote, it's where in India is it? I've never actually asked.
I don't know the province. I think it's in Rajasthan or
okay.
somewhere up north. But don't quote me on that, Rajasthan. It might be a different province. But it's up north in India. It is there. You can go there today still. And they've actually done tests and things on the site there, and they found evidence of nuclear warfare that was being fought there.
Yeah.
Like low level radiation and stuff. Yeah.
The sand was turned to glass.
Things like that.
Yeah, there's
even radiation signals that they've picked up. And there's no nearby nuclear facilities which could account for those levels of radiation there.
It's also old. It's not new radiation. It's old radiation.
Exactly.
Okay, so I forget what province that was in, but I have read about that. Okay. Mm-hmm.
So the Bhagavad Gita, or the war. Now the war was fought because the Bhagavad Gita is a chapter of a larger work called the Mahabharata. And the Mahabharata is famously known as the largest poem ever written. It's got something like 100,000 verses or something. It's enormous.
Wow.
And it's a very nice book. This was also compiled by the sage Veda Vyasadeva, who compiled the Vedas. And the Mahabharata was particularly made for people of a more common stature than the saintly and yogi type of personalities, which the Vedas are more directed to. Because
people like me.
People like you and me. Me too. And in the Mahabharata, it contains everything that a good American or European or African might like. It's got drama, it's got romance, it's got betrayal, it's got politics, it's got diplomacy, it's got power, it's got deception, it's got all these things that make a story a very good story. So in that way, it's really entertaining also to read. Yeah.
My understanding, I pronounce it wrong because I say Mahabharata, so it's Mahabharat.
Bharat. Yeah, usually the final A in a word, if it's like a short A, it just gets omitted completely.
Okay, and then also the Bhagavad Gita is within the Mahabharata.
That's correct.
The book itself is.
That's correct.
And a lot of people refer to it as the story of India.
Yeah, the story of India. Another name is also called the Gita Upanishad, because Bhagavad Gita literally means, Gita means song, and Bhagavad means of God. So it's a song of God because it's been spoken by Krishna, who's God. And
Beautiful.
Gita Upanishad
Beautiful.
means, it's also it's an Upanishad literature, because it's actually giving a philosophical treatise on spirituality, and giving a how would I say, teachings about how of things as they are. So that's also why it's called the Gita Upanishad. So it does form part of the Upanishads too. It's appreciated as such.
The song of God. I
Yeah,
love that.
that's what it means. So, and Sanskrit is a sung language, so it's spoken in Sanskrit, and generally Sanskrit is sung. It's the specific meters and rhythms that you say, like the first verse, you could say Dharma Kshetra Kurukshetra, like that, and then you sing it. So, be that as it may, so this battle happened. It's actually a family feud. At that time, the emperor, um, known as, um, who was the king of the planet, then there was no heir to the throne, so he had three sons. And that his first son was blind, his name was Dhritarashtra. His second son, his name is Pandu, and he was a pale-skinned person. Pandu actually means pale. And then the third son he had was called Vidura, which was a great sage. So, because his first son, who was supposed to be the heir of the throne, was blind, he could not be the emperor. So then his second son Pandu took over that role. But then Pandu, he died untimely while his children were extremely small due to a certain event. And then in his stead, his older brother Dhritarashtra, who was blind, was taking care of the management of the kingdom until the sons of Pandu were old enough to take over that part. But Dhritarashtra himself, he had 100 sons also, and they were quite wicked, especially his oldest two sons, Duryodhana and Dushashan, and who are the ones who are basically driving the whole plot. They're like the antagonists of the story, you could say. And the Pandavas, the five sons of Pandu are known
Who had
together as the
100
Pandavas.
sons?
Dhritarashtra, the blind king, he had the 100 sons. It was actually an in vitro, what do you call it? Not fertilization, but the term of the embryo was carried in earthen pots. So it was a in vivo, not in vitro. In vitro means biological. So
Yes.
they were actually first test tube babies. So
Ah.
all right, be that as it may. So then when the time came
So
for,
we're getting to the gambling story, I think.
yeah, that comes a little bit later. So at the end,
Mm.
or as the Pandavas, the sons of Pandu, they're old enough to take the throne. Dhritarashtra was attached to the throne by this time, and he wanted his own sons to take it. So now these conspiring start to try and eliminate the Pandavas. So there are many events which happened around that, which I won't get into too much now. But at the end of the day, they approached the Dhritarashtra, and they said, just give us each a tiny piece of land that we can be a king over that, and then we'll be satisfied. We don't mind if you keep the whole planet. Just give us each like a little bit of land. So then the Dhritarashtra was advised, yes, give them something. And they were given the worst space imaginable, like a uninhabitable, unworkable marshland kind of dump. And they accepted it happily, and they transformed it into the most amazing place ever. They built, they transformed the whole place into it's a agricultural miracle, an economical
Mm.
miracle, and palaces and everything very nice. So then, when his cousin came to see about that, he was very envious. And then, long story short, they were eventually challenged to a gambling match. And usually, the Kshatriya class, the warriors, they can't resist a good gamble. Very chivalrous kind of activity. And in due course of time, they played with loaded dice, and they lost everything. They lost everything, and they were even banished for 14 years. So 14 years has passed. A lot of stuff happens in between here, though. It's a really great story. You should really read it. And eventually, they like, okay, here's going to be a war. If you just give us each a tiny little village, we'll be fine. And then the person says, the older brother, he says, I won't give you enough land in which you can drive a pin inside it. I won't give you that much even. So then they understood, okay, a battle is going to be fought here. And so which is where the scene then said through Bhagavad Gita is going to be spoken. And in the first chapter, Arjuna, whose chariot driver is his friend Krishna, who Krishna actually took this position as a chariot driver, and he himself said that he won't personally participate in the war, but he will just assist Arjuna as his friend and advisor, and like that. He said it will be a bit unfair if I take part in the war because I'm God. So, yeah. So anyway, Arjuna.
And
So Arjuna told
just
Krishna,
no,
yeah.
there's a part of the story where Arjuna gets to choose between Krishna as his advisor or an army, and he chooses Krishna. Is that not true?
Yeah, that's interesting that you said that, because I just thought it and I kind of decided not to say it. But yeah, that happened. Arjuna could choose between Krishna's army, which was a number of Akshahinis. Now, Akshahini is a military, I would say, um, count of a certain amount of thousands of elephants, a certain amount of thousands of charioteers, a certain amount of thousands of foot soldiers, and so many things put together is one Akshahini division. So it's enormous. And so he could have gotten like a number of Akshahini soldiers added, or he could have chosen Krishna. So he chose Krishna. And his brother, his cousin Duryodhana thought like, what a fool. Because that what he did not choose would go to his cousin. So then his cousin got those armies. So the balance was actually, it was quite imbalanced. There was quite a number more Akshahinis in the military strength of Duryodhana than there was in Arjuna. So, but he chose Krishna. So he's telling Krishna, please drive in between the battlefield before the battle of the first day commences. He says, I just want to see who is on both sides. So he draws the chariot to there, and he looks and he sees on both of the sides, he sees family, he sees friends, he sees teachers, he sees people that he's shared intimate moments with, in various capacities. And he's just all of a sudden getting overwhelmed with grief of the imminent destruction which is about to take place, which is
Yes.
which is also is a testament of his compassionate nature. But what is quite interesting is that it says that he even became so weak that he could not even hold his bow. Like his bow was actually a celestial weapon, which he received in one of the Mahabharata stories that explains how he actually gets it, and it's called the Gandiva. And he says that my Gandiva is slipping from my hand. So he was not even able to do that, and he fell down. And it doesn't say this in the Bhagavad Gita, but I've heard commentaries of masters. They were saying that at that point he was actually crying, that he actually fell down and he started crying because he did not want to participate in the slaughter of the people that he loves. And on both sides, he saw they're going to all kill each other here today. And
Yes.
but he now, if you knew more about Arjuna, which this first chapter will then give you more of appreciation of, if you could appreciate him, is that this happened to him was quite extraordinary, because Arjuna was the most powerful archer not only in this planet, but he could also rival the heavens as well and the celestial beings. He was well respected as a very mighty and powerful warrior. And in this way, he was not just like a small time guy. He could fight with thousands of people by himself single-handedly. And so this is quite extraordinary. And anyway, so then the Bhagavad Gita, basically what it is in one sense, is Krishna trying to convince Arjuna to fight and trying to tell him that the reasons that he gives, which are the reasons he states in the first chapter of why he does not want to fight, Krishna is explaining that all your reasons, even though they sound very learned, even though they sound very logical and proper, they're actually all illusion, because you're just considering the body. You're not considering the soul here. You're not considering that there's destiny that's already ordained that this fight has to take place. You've not considered that fate has already decided all these people are going to die in this war, and that you cannot change that. Whether you participate in this war or not is not going to change what's going to happen. But you just get to play a part in it, and you also get to get glorified through it as well. So then the whole Bhagavad Gita gets spoken, and Krishna takes the opportunity to actually reveal certain spiritual truths about reality. It's the Bhagavad Gita is the ABCs of spirituality, of spiritual life. It does not talk about morality. It does not talk about ethics. It already assumes that the reader is at the human level. It assumes that you're a human being already. So it's not going to tell you,
Hmm.
you know, what to do and what not to do in terms of, you know, ethics and moral and stuff like that. It doesn't speak about that.
Yes.
So it just goes
So it's
straight
more
through.
about the human condition and the laws of the universe, virtually.
Yes, yes. So then there's Bhagavad Gita consists of 18 chapters, and I'm just gonna like finish with this because we're already at 15, 16 minutes. I see my data might only last another 5 or more minutes. So
Okay.
so these 18 chapters can be divided into 3 sections of 6 chapters each, and that the first 6 chapters deals with karma, with work. The middle 6 chapters deals with bhakti or devotion, and the last 6 chapters deal with gyan or with theoretical and philosophical knowledge. It gives a bit of a metaphysical explanation of matter, of material reality, and it also explains how the soul actually relates to all of those things, and the different types of consciousness that exist within this world, and how they all interface. So the first 6 chapters about work, or I would say what Krishna is also doing when he speaks about Bhagavad Gita, he is trying, or he is speaking in such a way that any type of person who reads the Bhagavad Gita will be able to relate with a part of it. So if you are more inclined to working hard, if you are more inclined to spending your energy so that you can achieve some kind of result in one form or another, which you wish to enjoy in whichever way, then that's where the karma sections is about, and how that one can purify that type of approach, and how one can do it in a way that one is detached, which is then karma yoga, and then even further than that, how one can engage in those things in a way which actually makes it spiritual. So you don't have to actually stop the work. It's more about the consciousness in which you work, and he talks about that in the later chapters towards 4 and 5, and
Beautiful.
yeah, it's very nice. And in the middle 6 chapters, he talks about purely acting on the impetus of love and devotion. That you're not acting because of what you want to do and what your desires are, that you are simply doing what you're meant to be doing, whatever role that is that you've assigned according to your karma, and you just do that as an offering unto God. And then he's talking about bhakti. So if you're a parent, you're a monk, you are a whatever profession that you are, that you try to make just a simple, honest living, and that you just dedicate that to God. And then he also gives explanations how to dedicate that, in which way. And so that's the middle 6 chapters.
So the
Yeah,
so the nature that you are, that you're doing that as accepting it and doing it as service to creation.
you're right. Yes, nicely said. And then the last 6 chapters, they're talking about, as I said, the more philosophical things. They're talking about the modes of nature, what their qualities are, how they act, and how we can perceive them in this world. They talk about the different types of observer that there is, that there's the individual observer like me and you inside the body, the soul, and then
Mhm.
there's also another observer which also exists within my and your body, that's the super soul, that is God, who's also present in everybody's heart. So there's 2 types of consciousness within each body, and then there's the material energy, and then, or they call it the field of activities, which is what you are able to be aware of, which is your body, and they describe it as you have 25 senses, which they then have, which I
Back to
explained.
Samkhya Yoga.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah. So some Samkhya yoga is going there, some metaphysics is going there, and then they're also talking about what constitutes suric or sura and asura qualities, which generally are translated as godly and demonic. But asura also means ungodly, so you could say godly and ungodly qualities, and certain qualities which are imbibed. And if one reads through that, one actually sees, at least I discovered, that a lot of these lesser qualities are present in myself. So and then so Krishna is also talking about these things, so you can identify, you know, where you're at. Yes.
It's not that you don't have enough to talk about, but I'm going to go off topic slightly here because you reminded me of something. In the
Yeah.
Veda astrology, they talk about that either somebody has a godly or ungodly energy.
Okay.
Do you? What is your take on the Vedic astrology?
Vedic astrology. Well,
Yes.
the Vedic astrology is
does it fit in your paradigm at all? First of all, is it something that you look at, or do you give it kudos, or you shun it?
oh no, I think it's bona fide. I think it's completely authentic. I myself am a little bit into Vedic astrology. I've not had so much time to dedicate to it, but it's definitely an authentic science.